Hello and welcome to the Film Whisperers here on Ben TV. My name is Saj.
I'm Alice.
We have an interesting topic today, and it's around the workplace and careers and depiction of workplace and careers in film.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So just to, I guess, rip the Band-Aid off, have you had a horrible boss experience in life?
Absolutely. I've had so many. I've had a lot of different jobs, a lot of different careers. I can't seem to stick to one. I've been in situations where men have come at me and they've been very aggressive, like, you better not say anything. When I said, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Just some weird things like that. So, and then I've had micromanagers as well, so I've had a range of horrible bosses and good ones too. It's not all bad.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Well, there are two managers that I can think of who I've reported into that I could say are quite horrible. So I think this is interesting because from a film lens, when we have a look at leaders, the depiction of a workplace culture in a film usually tends to sway towards the toxic, horrible, my manager is a moron, or my manager is just not a nice person to deal with.
Yeah.
So, and then, you look at it from a real life situation, and yes, there are some inspirational leaders who I've reported into, but a lot of the time we think mainly about those horrible bosses that we've had experiences with. It's almost like this, it's a mirroring of real life.
Yeah.
Why do you think that that's the case?
I guess because it's mirroring real life. I guess people that are watching it, majority of us aren't the bosses, and we've had those experiences. I think in film, obviously, they kind of make it bigger and worse, and so everyone can clearly see they're terrible bosses. But I think probably that's why, because it's maybe cathartic for us to see that shown on film.
Can you think of a film or two, or any amount really, where you've sort of seen and gone, wow, this is actually an interesting depiction of a workplace atmosphere?
An interesting one. I mean, we've got a whole bunch of films really, but I find Devil Wears Prada, for example, interesting. I like films which I'm interested in, so films about like writers and newspapers and detective shows, like the films, they're my kind of ones that I'm interested in. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's funny. The Devil Wears Prada is definitely top there for me, and I think it was one of those films where the leader was quite horrible to work for.
Yes.
But at the same time, you're also rooting for her because she was just, her demeanor, the one-liners were just so cutthroat.
Mm-hmm.
You liked her at the same time as much as you hated her. But then, there's films like Horrible Bosses, for example, that takes the comedic element of a workspace and then explores the fact that managers are horrible people. Or at least in that film. Yeah.
I think when we're looking at that, managers being horrible people, I think maybe it's just that managers are in a place of power for people that work below that. What's a daily occurrence, so they've got this power over this team, and in this little micro organization, this micro culture, and it can be so profoundly painful when they are horrible bosses or they treat you poorly.
Yeah.
What do you think makes a good boss?
I'm thinking back to when I first started working, which was probably about 17 years ago or 18 years ago. There was that element of fear that we had with managers.
Yeah.
And I feel as if the way TV shows and films depicted that was quite accurate. We're living at a point now where there's a push for inspirational leadership and, people that are supportive and people who've got emotional intelligence, have got empathy. We don't see that in film.
We see a lot of CEOs and top bosses kind of in film, don't we?
Yes.
Like, it really seems to focus on the highest level of boss in film.
Yeah.
And in the smaller levels, the bosses are really terrible. But the higher ones, it's a bit of a mix, I think. Do you know what I mean? Like, so like a small business, when it's about maybe they work in a school, the principal's terrible,
Yeah.
but then you work somewhere in it like a big finance, or a lot of the office jobs I feel like are in the e-commerce world
Yeah.
or IT.
I think there's something about TV shows that do it better than film. And I don't know, I think with film, I feel like I'm yet to come across a movie where they show a leader in a positive light. I mean, in that office setting, I can't think of any.
No, I really can't think of any either. I could just think of TV. So what kind of TV shows would you say have got that inspirational leader?
Look, I'm not going to say inspirational, but I'm going to say a leader that I really like. So Gilmore Girls, I think Lorelai is an amazing leader. So she runs an inn. She's friends with the chef, the receptionist, and I just love how she manages that workspace. It's actually really kind and beautiful. We just spoke about Grey's Anatomy outside of this segment where, again, there was I think her name was Dr. Bailey, who was firm, but at the same time, really inspirational and had a lot of empathy and emotional intelligence. What are some of the TV shows that you can think of?
Scrubs, for example.
Yes.
That's kind of in the same time period as well that we're talking about in the noughties.
Yes.
I think detective shows have that. So Brooklyn Nine-Nine, for example.
Yes, Holt.
So yeah, Detective Holt.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about good bosses, I think we're looking at supportive to their workers. They listen to them, but they're also firm and they know what they're talking about. And they've got room to listen to their staff.
Yeah.
Would you say that's kind of what you're looking for in a good boss?
Yes, 100%.
And I think obviously not doing the wrong thing, not doing some dodgy thing behind the doors, closed doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought of a film actually where the manager was quite supportive and strangely was played by the actor who played Holt in...
Okay.
Have you seen She Said?
No.
Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Okay. So She Said's the story of the two journalists that took down Harvey Weinstein.
Ah, okay.
I think their name was Jodie Cantor and Megan Twohey. And in the film, it's played by Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan. Yeah. And their boss was played by the actor who passed away.
Yes.
And if I remember right, he was very supportive of their story getting published, and I think I just thought of that, but
yeah. You know what else is a good film actually? Hustlers. I was just thinking
100%. I completely forgot about Hustlers.
Yeah. That is a good boss. She cares about about her workers. They work in a strip club, but she cares about her strippers and she wants to make sure they're supportive. And actually, I think that I see that in a lot of those films where the boss is a woman.
The support
support. Yeah, in strip kind of those kind of movies.
So it's almost like these are my girls and I want to protect them type thing. Yeah.
But I mean, it's completely different to what was the one that it's the terrible one about the woman. It's like one of the worst films ever made.
Showgirls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is also amazing, but
the boss in that. Oh, it was Gina Gershon, wasn't it?
It was kind of a weird power dynamic, right? She treated her poorly, but also it was kind. I do notice that in some bosses too, though, that's kind of a trait is where they're kind of manipulative. They're like aggressive and they're very, they'll really like talk down to their staff, but then they'll be sweet and kind to them as well. It's a weird manipulating kind of gaslighting, or I don't know, I'm not quite sure, but I think maybe Showgirls was kind of like that a little bit, that weird manipulation, like cruel and then sweet, and you kind of get in this weird toxic relationship.
Yeah.
When we talk about women specifically, because we talk about feminism a lot here, we'll talk about women in film. We can look back at how that maybe the careers have changed and what we're seeing. I think pre-Hays Code, like from, I think it's 1929 to 1934. I hope that's right. I'm going to get wrecked if it's wrong. But in that time period, film was the talkies, and the film was like crazy and fun. And they showed women in careers and they weren't punished for it. But as soon as the Hays Code came into place, one of the things that they wanted was to put the women back into to be a housewife.
Yeah.
You know, obviously there was a lot of things. There was no violence. You couldn't kiss with an open mouth. Those kind of things. But that was one of the other things they're doing, bringing those traditional roles back into film, fake roles. And anyway, so I think it was like the 60s we started. Well, that's when I think 68, the Hays Code was, they got rid of the Hays Code. Yeah. And then we started seeing in the 60s women coming into film, definitely in the 70s with the feminism. But then in the 80s, that's the kind of time period that I can think of women being in the office.
Yes.
And I think 9 to 5 is a good example of it.
Yes.
Just to touch on that. So in the 80s, we're seeing a bit of a pushback on feminism.
Yes.
Feminism becoming a dirty
word. Yeah.
And I think we do see that in the 9 to 5. What do you think of 9 to 5?
It's a masterpiece, I feel, and I feel as if it is in a way, the epitome of a toxic work culture.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I remember I had a friend who watched that film and said, oh, their demeanor, how mean they were, the way they spoke down to people, actually harass the women, talk down to them. And, you know, there was a point that we actually, at the time, found it quite hilarious with the things that they did to him. I'd like to think that doesn't happen anymore to the same degree. Mm-hmm. And people don't watch a film like that and go, oh, this is actually very similar to my workplace. I think the 3 actresses in that are just the perfect casting. I think it's almost like your perfect feminist equation. You have Jane Fonda, this icon in the feminist movement, paired with Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton. Yeah. And it just works. I think, it's just, I would say it's definitely one of my favorite films. And, you know, interesting, we were talking about workplace and careers. You think of the theme song. Yes. You know, the opening line is, you know, tumble out of bed and stumble to the kitchen. I just pour myself a cup of ambition. And the whole thing is just about, it feels like Groundhog Day. Every day, it's just like, you go into the office, you do your work, you come back home. The next day, you wake up, you go into the office, you come back home. I feel as if things have changed now as well. And I can't think of a film that shows modern day workplace culture and etiquette.
I don't see that either. I think it's more about like perhaps like the specific people, like the boss or something like that. So it's not like that whole atmosphere. In film, I'm talking about. Like I see a lot of like the biopic, the CEO biopic, and I'm curious why we have that, why that's so popular in film. We've got obviously like Steve Jobs. Yep. How many of those? I saw last year there was one on Jeff Bezos. Yep. We've got a few women CEO things, but I think it's not like the come from nothing and build this business. It's like the weird, what I care a lot and things like that, where it's kind of treats women in a really poor light, like they're very manipulative and nasty and stuff. But when we look at these biopics of, for example, these 2, you know, gods in our current culture, you know, they kind of put under the rug or like the bad things they're doing, the people that work below them. For example, Amazon. I think in the for Jeff Bezos's biopic, they said something about this guy. Jeff comes from a humble beginnings and creates this empire, you know, and becomes rich. And it's so aspirational. But it's like, we know that Amazon workers are allegedly treated quite poorly. Yes. You can see that in films like Nomadland, which I think is a good contrast to that film that came out in 2020. Yeah. And that shows how a woman works at Amazon as just one of those fulfillment centers, but lives in a caravan because she had to sell a house because of the recession. Yeah. And, you know, the realities of the 99% compared to this 1% that we seem to be so obsessed with, these kind of biopics, making them God.
I think as a society, we are obsessed sometimes with power and influence. And I think when these biopics come up, it's just catering to our greed in that area. I feel as if, we look at, say, the Steve Jobs. I mean, they did 2 films on him. I think one had Ashton Kutcher and one had Michael Fassbender.
Yeah.
And I think the brand Apple is so popular. It's almost like a thing where they want to make sure that not that they want to make sure, they want to capitalize on that and go, well, here's a story of a person that just came out of nowhere, did this thing, and then made lots of money and became the CEO of this empire. In a way, it's almost like, well, so can you,
Yeah.
I think they want to tell that story to inspire people.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, it tends to be straight white men.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that kind of takes away, and even women, when we do see, like, for example, Devil Wears Prada, or some of these
Paper giants
and stuff, you see these rich, predominantly white women, and they'll make a narrative that they're self-made.
Yes.
But in reality, they've been given a good education.
Yeah.
They've been support. They know the right people. They've often been given money from their families, or they've come into money because of their connections.
Yeah.
And then they've been able to create this business. It's not like it's kind of a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Really, that they like put on that we could do that. That every person could do that.
So I guess the question is, so, we've spoken about films where there's in a way, I'm just going to use it on horrible bosses, right?
Yes.
What would the ideal workplace film be? And would it actually be boring for us to watch?
We need some sort of conflict, don't we?
Yes.
That's hard to say. I do think there is, when I do see good leadership,
Yes.
it's in roles where it's kind of, they're supporting like a writer, for example, or a detective, or
education as well.
Or education.
Teachers, yep.
Something where they're inspiring, that the boss sees the person's skills or their potential and helps them to become better at their job. Obviously, it's helping them at the end, but I think that's where I see those good things. And it can be even like things like The Bone Collector with Angelina Jolie. She had the boss that was helping her, pushing her to find out, unravel this mystery, to push her to keep going. Perhaps that's for selfish reasons, but I mean, she figured it out in the end, didn't she?
Yeah, yes.
So I don't know. I think that it's kind of in those kind of areas. It's almost the military kind of started, because they're old professions, and so those old professions are kind of that very leadership, people learning to be at that top kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's very much a certain way to do things there.
I would just like to see a film where they just show what it's like to be a worker in 2024, and having a boss that's inspirational, has empathy. You just, I don't know, you just don't see it. I mean, is there worthiness in that storytelling? I don't know at this stage. Maybe if there's an additional mystery or a side story to go with it. So, as an example, I don't know, this guy, he's got a second life that no one knows about, then he comes to work and he, I don't know, just something like that. Or, even if it's a story about a single mum who is trying to look after her family and then comes to work and what their workplace is like. I don't know.
And I don't know if they can really get that in a film. It's more a TV kind of like a serial kind of thing, or a two-parter, I think, to get audiences interested, to build that backstory, or the little, the micro relationships which are within your office. There's a film, Patterson, I think it's 2017, 2018.
Yep.
By Jim, I can never say his last name, Jim Jarmusch. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
Well, it's got Adam Driver in it.
Yep.
And the film,
I know this one.
He's a bus driver.
Yeah.
And the film, it's really beautiful, and it just follows Adam Driver's character around. His name's Patterson. and he's just a bus driver. He does the same route every day, but he's a poet as well, and he notices things around him, and he incorporates that into his poetry.
Yeah.
But it's a very simple film.
Yeah.
Not much happens. It's more realistic, but it's beautiful. And so I think that's a good example of it's maybe not an office culture.
Yes.
He's very much by himself, but
Yeah.
just a simple job, someone doing a simple job. They're not the boss, they're not a CEO, they're not high powered, making millions and billions and, inspirational. He's just enjoying life as it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So a film that just shows someone having a passion or just a career interest.
Yeah. Just being content in their job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we never really see that. I mean, maybe it's boring, like you say,
Well,
if they're content with their job.
Well, I think there are films around, say, journalism and stuff where they definitely show people content in their job, and
Yes.
they don't really show the dark side of journalism.
Yeah.
It's like films like, say, Spotlight, for example.
Yeah.
Or even films around, say, the Watergate scandal. Like there's definitely, you could feel there's a bit of passion there.
Yeah.
But it's different because they're not everyday careers.
It's even like Bridget Jones' Diaries or 10 Things I Hate About You, films which are like a rom-com, for example, but the protagonist has a cool job.
Yeah.
And you get to see some of their life, their daily life.
Yeah.
Or even The Wedding Planner.
Yes. Yes.
She's a good boss.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just realized that's a good example of a good boss. Those are the films that I think I see the most, with women, with good careers. It's not too crazy with bosses or anything like that.
Maybe that's a subject that can be explored, either in Australian film or in American film or British film, because I just like to see a film about a story that's just set in a workplace where the boss is not your stereotypical silly or evil. They're just managers, they're just people, and they show them being inspirational and being I guess empathetic, and just any kind of feature that you'd want a good manager to have.
Instead of it just being a lazy thing. Okay, who are they going to fight against? The boss. The boss can be another issue.
Yeah. Or like The Wolf of Wall Street, for example. Like I know a lot of people that have looked at that as leadership, and because some of the things that happen in there are so outrageous.
Yeah.
But just to move away from the depiction of leadership in that light and just show leaders just being good leaders that are not millionaires.
Yes.
Or these CEOs are just managers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great.
That would be great. Anyway, that's all the time that we have to talk about
great.
leadership, careers, workplace settings in film, and I will check out Patterson.
Yeah. Oh yeah, please do.
Thanks for watching The Film Whisperers here on Ben TV. My name is Saj.
I'm Alice. Goodbye.